Hey, poker people, it's Sky Matsuhashi, and this is the Smart Poker Study Podcast. In episode 154 last week, I discussed my daily 2 to 5 minute Anchor podcast, where I share with you random poker thoughts about studying, strategies, and mindsets. It's poker study time, y'all. Thanks for tuning in to some more poker strategy and study talk from Two Thumbs, this guy. So thank you very much to all who subscribe and rate the podcast and leave reviews, and for those who spread the word as well. All of you are a huge support, and I truly do appreciate it. And speaking of support, I've been getting tons of it from all of you joining the How to Study Poker Volume 2 launch team. This next book is going to rock the Amazon Kindle charts, all due to the help of you gnarly people willing to lend a hand. If you haven't joined the launch team just yet, I'll tell you how in a little bit. But first, let's get to the poker talk, and in particular, we be talking post-flop no-limit hold'em today. So last week, I told you about the Anchor app and how it makes it very easy for me to put out a new daily podcast. And that podcast is called Smart Poker Study on Anchor. And as of this recording, I've got 54 episodes out. And I'm going to keep on keeping on. So I'm expecting by December 31st to have roughly 170 short 2 to 5 minute segments there on Anchor and on my podcast. And all those different segments, they often center around something I studied earlier in that day. And last time I threw down 5 segments, and I'm going to do it again. Today I'm talking probes and floats, also the check raise, a big turn leak of mine, and I'll also talk about the power of suited hands post-flop, and also just the general idea of folding less post-flop. So we're doing all post-flop talk today. If you like what you hear, please subscribe to my new almost daily podcast called Smart Poker Study on Anchor. You can find it on iTunes, Google Play Music, and in whatever podcatcher you end up using or you tend to use. So please visit the show notes page for everything I discussed today, along with some screenshots and links at www.smartpokerstudy.com/pod155. While you're there, you can sign up to join the launch team. Alrighty, it's about that time. Gambate!
And now for our feature presentation.
So a few episodes ago, in episode 147, I talked about probes and float bets. This next segment you're about to hear is just a little bit additional information on both of those bets.
The podcast you're about to hear was made with Anchor. You can use Anchor to make a podcast right from your phone, no experience necessary. Plus, it's completely free. Get the app at anchor.fm/podcast.
Good morning, poker people. Thanks for joining me for day 10 of 66 days of Anchor in a row. So today is a companion episode to my normal podcast, episode number 147, about probe bets and float bets. But I want to go a little bit more into detail on the probe bet today. So the probe bet is a bet made out of position after the pre-flop raiser checks behind on the prior street. So they had the chance to c-bet, but they showed weakness by checking behind. And within that podcast, I give you a way to study the probe bets and facing probe bets. But as I was going through my database, my turn probe bet, I took a look at that out of 161 hands where I did make the probe bet. I was positive 340 big blinds per 100 hands. That's a great win rate. So probe bets are paying off for me. On the river, it's only 22 hands, but I'm positive 206 big blinds per 100 hands. So anecdotally, at least over this relatively small sample, my probe bets are pretty profitable. But I was going through a lot of the losing hands when I'm making probe bets, and I found that a lot of them don't work when my opponent is capable of checking behind second pair on the flop. So an opponent will raise with something like, King 10, Jack 5, whatever the case is, whatever they're choosing to raise with, and you just call out of the blinds. Well, when it comes Ace King and their King 10 hits second pair with a bad kicker, or it comes Queen Jack 4 and their Jack 5 has second pair bad kicker, they're often not going to bet there, but they're willing to check call down, not check call, they're in position, but they're willing to call down on future streets. So they save themselves one street of possibly giving value away by checking behind that flop. So what you want to do is when your opponents are capable of checking behind a top pair or a second pair or even like a two pair kind of hand, whatever you catch them checking behind, make a note on them. Before you decide to make that turn or river probe, take a look at your notes and see what they're capable of checking behind, because you could be betting into some strength right there. Alrighty, everybody. Tomorrow I'll be talking about, or in tomorrow's segment, I'll be talking about the float bet. Take care. Alrighty, we're back for a little bit more poker talk right here. The prior segment was about the probe bet. Right now, I want to talk a little bit more about the float bet. Remember, this is in relation to podcast episode 147, where we talked about those two bets, but more specifically, the float bet. So I took a look through my database and looked at my win rate when I was floating on the flop, and it's 315 big blinds per 100, positive that is. Floating the turn, 1148 big blinds per 100 hands, and on the river, it's 3000 big blinds per 100 hands. Now, obviously, the number grows because float bets are made when your opponent fails to c-bet on that street. Well, if you're floating on the turn, that means your opponent built the pot a little bit with a flop c-bet. So it's a slightly bigger pot. When he checks the turn, you bet the turn to take it down, to take it away from him. Same thing with a river float bet. If they fail to c-bet the river, well, they had to have c-bet the flop and turn, which built that pot. So when they failed to c-bet the river, you decided to float after their check and then, took it down or possibly gained some value. So that's kind of what I want to get to today, is that as the streets progress, of course, the pots are getting bigger. Your float bets are going to earn more money. So you definitely want to be floating more on the turn and the river. That doesn't mean float every single time, though. You've got to be aware of your opponent's range, what they're capable of. You have to put them on, you have to kind of figure out what did they bet the flop with, what did they barrel on the turn with, and why didn't they bet this river card? If the river card is a scare card and they think you were possibly calling on a draw and the draw completed, go ahead and fire as a bluff. If they are a calling station, and sometimes can be aggressive, but if they bet the flop in the turn, they'll be less likely to fold on that river. So when you are floating on the turn or the river, you want to really pay attention to that card and figure out, why did my opponent bet the prior street but checked this street? So it's always, like I talked about in the podcast, it's always about ranges and board interaction and those future cards and what your opponent thinks you might be doing. Alrighty, thanks much and have a good Sunday. All right, well, I hope that information, that additional information on probes and float bets helps you out. This next segment is about everybody's favorite aggressive play, the check raise. Hey, poker people! Thank you so much for tuning in to another Anchor segment. So I've been doing some check raise study lately, and as we all know, check raises are great because they often look really strong, so they can lead to some good bluffing opportunities right there. But at the same time, your opponents know that check raises are good bluffs to make, especially against the common c-bet. So when you decide to check raise, if you have a value hand, you can oftentimes get maximum value because they're just not going to believe you. Hey, I c-bet all the time. This guy's just trying to bluff me off. Screw that. I'm going to c-bet, then 3-bet over his check raise. Well, when you flop the nuts, you're just getting max value. Maybe because you're already an aggressive player and he thinks you're capable of bluffing. If you're a super nitty player and decide to make the check raise, well, your opponents will probably read into that, or they will read from that you have a strong hand, and they'll just fold to you. You won't get any value out of that check raise right there. But so check raises are great for some good bluffing opportunities or possibilities right there. Also great for gaining value. But there are two additional benefits to making aggressive check raises. This time with semi bluffs. So a semi bluff just means you have some kind of a drawing hand. Maybe you have the nut flush draw, so you're check raising to try to blow them off the pot, or maybe you have an open ender plus a pair, and the next card could help you out, add some equity to your hand. So the two additional benefits of making aggressive check raises with your semi-bluffs are, number one, those check raise semi-bluffs give you fold equity, allowing for the chance to win the pot right then and there. Great, that's a benefit. And the second benefit is they can lead to a free river card when the check raise scares them and they check behind on the turn. And we've all seen that happen. Maybe we've been victims of it, or we have done it ourselves. You check raise the flop, hoping that they fold. And then they don't fold, they call, and then comes the turn. Well, you check again, but they're scared that maybe you did hit your straight, maybe you hit your flush, maybe you hit your two pair or your set on that flop, so they're not going to bet again. Maybe they themselves are on a draw, maybe they just have a weak top pair hand, whatever it is. Because they check behind the turn, shabam, free river card for you, which is great if you were on some kind of a semi-bluff on the flop. Alrighty, everybody, good luck out there. If you are planning on making some check raises, which I hope you do, make them for bluffs and for value, and make sure you know why you're check raising. Don't just check raise just to be aggressive, but know that, hey, if I'm bluffing right here, my opponent should be able to fold. If I'm going for value, they should be able to continue versus my check raise with worse hands. Alrighty, good luck y'all, and check raise dem foos.
Yep. Like I said, some of us check raise kind of at inopportune times or just when you don't know what to do. But make sure you do have that reason. You're either going for a bluff or you're going for value, and know that you'll likely get what you want. And this next segment is about a big leak of mine that I found through Leak Tracker, and it's fold to turn bet. My percentage is way too high, so listen to me discuss that.
Hey, poker people, thanks for tuning in to another Anchor segment. I am totally loving this app. So, anybody who listens to me, they know that I play online poker, and my preferred database software is Poker Tracker 4. I love the HUD, I love going through the filters, researching hands, diving in, figuring out what my opponents are doing, what I'm doing wrong, all that stuff. Well, speaking of what I'm doing wrong, I use Leak Tracker within Poker Tracker 4 to go through my database and tell me areas of potential leaks. What Leak Tracker does is it'll spit out your percentage among 26 different stats, and it will show you where you fall along a spectrum. Well, I guess the spectrum is from 0 to 100%, but it'll also show you where the average winning players' stats are. So if you're above that, that means you're doing something more often than most average winning players. If your stat falls below that range, then you're doing it less frequently than the others. And depending on if you're high or low or right in the middle, it could look like not in the middle, but if you're high or low, that could be a potential leak. And then what you want to do is figure out where your potential leaks are. Then you go back through your database and filter through them. In tomorrow's segment, I will talk about one of the specific leaks that I found very recently and I've been doing some diving into. Alrighty, I'll catch you all tomorrow. Thank you. Oh, and of course, if you have Poker Tracker 4 and have never used Leak Tracker, give it a shot. Alrighty, catch you later. Hey, poker people. Thanks for tuning in to another poker segment here on Anchor. So, in the prior segment, I talked about utilizing Leak Tracker within Poker Tracker 4 to help you find your cash game leaks. So, yesterday I did just that, sent my database through Leak Tracker, and it came back. The biggest leak, it looks like, is that my fold to turn bet percentage is way too high. It's at 77%. The average winning players fold anywhere from 44 to 66%, I think is the numbers that Poker Tracker told me. But I'm folding at 77% way too often, and it's folding in a variety of circumstances. Maybe I folded to a donk bet. Maybe I bet and folded to a raise. Maybe the opponent checked and I folded to a check raise. Maybe they c-bet. They double barrel the board and I folded to a second c-bet. Whatever the case is, I'm folding way too often at 77%. That basically means my opponent should be bluffing every turn against me. Now, this is something I totally have to work on. Folding at 77% means I'm just super turn honest. If I get beyond the turn, then you should never bluff the river on me, but maybe go for max value, and one of the things too, my opponents should be doing a ton of bluffing, because if I fold 77%, well, a half pot bet only needs to work 33% to break even. I'm folding more than double that. A 3/4 pot bet needs to work only 43%, and I'm folding way more than that at 77. And of course, if you make a full pot size bet against me, it only needs to work 50% of the time to break even, and I'm folding 77%. So turn bluffs are super profitable against me. I have to turn this around, do some more research, figure out what I need to do just to not fold as much. And it could be getting more aggressive on the flop, folding more on the flop instead of getting the turn in bloated pots. There's a lot of different things that I could and should be doing that I'm going to be looking into in order to fix this leak of mine. So if this is a leak of yours, go ahead and call in, let me know about it. We can discuss. Alrighty, catch y'all later. Have a good Saturday.
Volume 2 of How to Study Poker is almost complete, and I need your help to make it to the top 100 of the Kindle charts when it is released. Last time we made it to number 1 within the poker category, but I'm gunning for more this time. You can help by joining the launch team at www.smartpokerstudy.com/how to study poker volume 2. Launch team members will receive status updates on the progress of the book. I'll also shout them out on the podcast, and their names will be included in the book's acknowledgments page. Team members will also have exclusive early access to buy the PDF version of the book 1 week before it's available on Amazon. Everyone who purchases will also receive a free copy of the audiobook version of Volume 2, so you can listen as you're commuting, doing the lawn, folding the laundry, all that stuff. You can join once again by visiting www.smartpokerstudy.com/how to study poker volume 2. And thank you so much to those who are already part of the team. We've got James, Mark Hatton, Chris is in, Shaheen is in the group, Andrew joined, Jim Jones joined, Mark Ajit, Moses Magana, Michael Mateo, Demetrius, Rob is in, of course. We've got Larry in, Wendy, Faith has joined the group. We've also got Brian and Johan Cedarland. Kevin and Paul, of course, is in. Patrick with a C, or actually, Patrick always has a C, so I guess Patrick without the K. Yakovos, John is in. Ryan, Ivan, Kevin, Randy, Oscar, Greg. This is a Greg V. We've also got Greg C on board. Jim, Eric, Hotlar, I believe I'm saying that right. Stephen, Gareth, Flavio. Love that name, Flavio. Chad is in. Jim, Ralph the Hypnotist is with us. Paolo Gaiotto is with us. John, Kimberly Hoy, Yoshiaki, my, I guess you can say my brother from another mother, and father. Ken Lind, bracelet winner Ken Lind is in. Camillo David Robert Dewberry, you might know him as the Poker Monk. Philippe Verhelst is in. Let's see. Oh, Denise, my wife is in. Hey, thank you very much, Denise, for your support. Mayor is in. Dante Keith is part of the launch team. Liam and Brian Roy, along with the final name on the list so far, Jason, spelled kind of interestingly. Thanks, Jason. And thank you everybody else for joining the launch team. So if you want to be part of this exclusive group, visit www.smartpokerstudy.com/how to study poker volume 2. And some additional shout-outs right now. Raymond Bowker and Jim Cook both upped their online poker game by purchasing the Smart HUD for Poker Tracker 4. Thank you guys very much. I'm sure those videos I sent you in addition to the Smart HUD is really helping you kick some butt there. We've got a brand new Patreon subscriber, John Coveney. This guy is awesome. He's a military veteran, put in his time for us. Now he's putting his time in the tables, and he's supporting me on Patreon. Thank you so much, John. I really do appreciate it. And we have a few webinar purchases this past week. Eric Stewart and Stephen Bell bought the How to Study Poker webinar, so I'm sure their study skills are improving, their play is improving, and they'll just be bringing in the buku bucks real soon. And we also have Getting the Most Out of Poker Tracker 4 webinar, and that was purchased by Paulo, Jim, Eric, and Yakovos. Thank you guys very much. If anybody has any questions about the webinars, just send them on in to me, sky@smartpokerstudy.com, and thank you guys very much. If you would like to support the podcast, just visit the show notes page for today to find out how. Alrighty, back to class, poker people. So this next segment relates to that prior run about my leak of folding too much to turn bets, and this segment is called Don't Be Overly Foldy. Too many of us just fold way too much post-flop, and here are some ways that we can get around that or to work on that.
Hey, poker people. Thanks for joining me for another Anchor segment. Today is day 9 of 66 in a row. And yesterday, I might have actually said accidentally it was day 7, but I just double-checked the calendar, and it's 9 of 66. We're on our way. Almost 15% of the way there. But anywho, today I want to discuss something very important. Don't be a foldy player. This has been one of my weaknesses for a long time, and I've been struggling to get beyond it. A while ago, I read Ed Miller's book called The Course, and skill number 2 in the course is basically don't pay people off. And I took that to heart, and I started folding just way too often post-flop, on the flop, the turn, and the river. And I've just noticed that I'm just folding way too often. I'm folding at times when I shouldn't be folding, when I have second pair, good kicker, top pair, weak kicker, and I'm just folding because I see monsters under the bed. Well, this was kind of a while ago. I've been working on it now. I'm getting better about it. And one of the ways I'm getting better about it is I'm being more diligent in assigning my opponent a pre-flop range, and I assess how likely that range could hit top pair, hit a set, hit two pair, something worth folding to on the flop, you know? The more you do this kind of work, the more you think to yourself, geez, he just now bet. What could he be betting with that beats me? And if you can name a ton of hands in their range that beat you, yeah, sure, go ahead and make the fold, if you don't think a raise will get them to fold. But if you can actively have their range in the head and they suddenly bet and you think, geez, I beat most of the hands in their range, I should call or possibly raise for value or push him off of his bluff or semi-bluff, that kind of a thing. So I want you all to just be less foldy. Have a reason to fold, just like I always talk about having a reason to bet or to raise. You know, basically when you're betting or raising, you should always be going for value or be going for a bluff, but when you're going for value, name the hands that can pay you off that you beat, and when you're making a bluff, name the hands that are better than yours that can fold. The same kind of thing holds true when you're considering folding to your opponent's bet. If you beat most of their range, make the call or the raise, and if you don't beat anything and can't get them to fold, heck, just fold. Don't give them that value. So today's basic message is don't be overly foldy. Alrighty, good luck everybody. If you have any questions or just want to say hi, hit that call in button and I'll catch you later.
Yep, so if you do find, just like I said there, if you find that you're like me and you fold just way too much post-flop, do some Poker Tracker 4 digging and figure out why and figure out how to turn that around. And the final segment for today is called The Power of Suited Hands Post-Flop. We all know that suited is better than offsuit, but in this little segment, I give you actual numbers to demonstrate why.
Hey, poker people. Thanks for tuning in to another Anchor segment. So we've all heard that suited hands are more valuable than the offsuits, right? Like, for example, 10-9 suited versus a 20% range. 10-9 suited has 40% equity pre-flop, and the 10-9 offsuit has 36.5%. So there's a 3.5% gap there. So the suited hand, 3.5% better. But something you might not know, and I was just messing around with Flopzilla today and I found this out, that 10-9 suited versus a 20% range, let's say the flop comes down 10-3-5 and the 10-9 suited has a flush draw along with top pair. Well, that 10-9 suited has 73% equity on that flop when it goes top pair plus a flush draw. If it didn't have the flush draw, if it was just maybe the 3 and the 5 were a different suit or it was 10-9 offsuit, that hand would only have 57%. There's a 16% equity swing right there when you flop that flush draw. That is the power of the suited hands. Suited aces, suited kings, suited anything. That's the power with that flush possibility there. So that's why they say it's so much better choosing those suited hands versus offsuits. So keep that in mind the next time you're deciding, oh, it's a 10-9 suited, should I play this? Hey, why not? It's an ace-4 offsuit, should I play this? Probably not. Alrighty, y'all, take care, have a good one.
The podcast you just heard was recorded with Anchor. If you want to make your own, download the Android or iOS app completely free from anchor.fm/podcast. That's anchor.fm/podcast.
Challenge! Here's my challenge to you for this episode. Find your own post-flop biggest leak and make a plan to fix it. Maybe you hardly ever c-bet, or maybe you donk bet too often when you don't know what to do. Maybe you call every river, or maybe you're constantly getting your triple barrel bluffs called by second pair hands. Take the time to dig through your database to find this leak, then make a plan to fix it with a full week of study. Also, don't forget to focus on this during each session you play. The only way to fix a leak is with hard work, so get to it. Turn that leak into a chip accumulating skill. Now it's your turn to take action and do something positive for your poker game.
Now get it on.
Thank you so much for listening. If you can type the words or if you can say Smart Poker Study, you can find me on Twitch, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and now on Anchor. You can also hear the show on your Amazon Echo device. Just tell it to play the Smart Poker Study podcast on TuneIn. And of course, send me those emails, sky@smartpokerstudy.com. Alrighty, poker people, later this week I'll release podcast episode number 156, where I'm going to continue the hand-reading minimum effective dose with class number 4. And in that class, I'll discuss the best questions to get the best answers to learn the most information you can while you're hand reading. Word of mouth is the best advertising, so thank you very much for sharing this show with other poker people. Your sharing and caring is what helps us grow. Until next time, study smart, play much, and make your next session the best one yet.